depends on how strong or how weak we are. Last few months here at George Street, we've had a lot of different events happen, haven't we? We've had a lot of loss. We've had family members pass on. We've had friends pass on. We weren't always prepared for those losses. We weren't always prepared for that event to take place. We prayed, we hoped, but the losses still hit hard. And yet, even in that pain, we were able to see God's faithfulness. We were able to see it through community. We were able to see it through each other. We were able to find peace that didn't make sense at all. And that's the lesson that David is going to give us this evening. That's what he's going to let us know, that we can have peace in uncomfortable situations. When life feels impossible, we still have a God who fights for us. We're not prepared, but God is. We're not prepared, but God is always prepared. Let's continue reading. 1 Samuel chapter 17, verses 23 through 26. And then we'll skip down to 32 through 37. So 1 Samuel chapter 17, 23 through 26. It says, as he talked with them, the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, came up out of the ranks of the Philistines and spoke the same words as before. And David heard him. All the Israelites, when they saw the man, fled from him and were very much afraid. The Israelites said, have you seen this man who has come up? Surely he has come up to defy Israel. The king will greatly enrich the man who kills him, and will give him his daughter and make his family free in Israel. David said to the men who stood by him, what shall be done for the man who kills this Philistine and takes away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? Skip on down to verse 32 through 37. David said to Saul, let no one's heart fail because of him. Your servant will go and fight with this Philistine. Saul said to David, you are not able to go against the Philistine to fight with him, for you are just a boy, and he has been a warrior from his youth. But David said to Saul, your servant used to keep sheep for his father, and whenever a lion or a bear came and took a lamb from the flock, I went after it and struck it down, rescuing the lamb from its mouth. And it turned against me. And if it turned against me, I would catch it by the jaw, strike it down, and kill it. Your servant has killed both lions and bears, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be like one of them, since he has defied the armies of the living God. David said, the Lord who saved me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will save me from the hand of this Philistine. So Saul said to David, go, and may the Lord be with you. I told Isaiah to fall asleep during Uncle Anthony's preaching. He already asleep, just out. Underdog again. David looks out, and he sees this big, gigantic guy. Sees Goliath, massive warrior there in the field, taunting the army of the living God. Everyone else is terrified. It says that they fled. But David remembers how God has already helped him in defeating some pretty big animals. I don't think I'm going to get into a fight with a lion or a bear. Hopefully I'll never see one. Exactly, my thoughts too. But here we had David saying that I'm not afraid to go up against this uncircumcised Philistine, this guy that's mocking my God, because God has already brought me through major battles before. David's hope was rooted in remembrance. He knew that the same God who had been faithful before is still going to be faithful now. Romans 8:31. It says, if God is for us, who can be against us? You know, that's not just a verse. It's truly a reality for Christians. If God is for us, then who can really be against us? Hope is born when we trust that God's faithfulness didn't stop in the past. We know that God is still fighting for his people today. Think of a child jumping into a pool, into their father's arms. I had a picture so we could actually picture it, but I have to do it mentally. What's going on in that child's brain when they jump into the pool? There's probably not a whole lot other than they know that their dad is right there and the dad's going to catch him when he jumps in. Not going to let him drown or anything like that. Story on myself, I must have had a real trust in just family in general, because one time at my Aunt Deb's, I just jumped in without my swimmies and just started flailing, hoping somebody would come and get me. I don't know if that was smart or just, I don't know. But that's how God is with us. He wants us to trust him enough to just jump to him. Knowing that he's caught us in the past. Knowing that he has helped us in the past. And that's how David felt with God at this very instance. He knew that God had helped him already. And that's how we can feel when we remember his past faithfulness towards us. Let's continue reading. 1 Samuel chapter 17, verses 40 through 42. Now people are just leaving my sermon. 1 Samuel chapter 17, 40 through 42. It says, then he took his staff in his hand and chose 5 smooth stones from I can't read my own handwriting. From the brook? What is it? Somehow I've got Wadi in there. W-A-D-I. I have no idea where that came from. And put them in his shepherd's bag in the pouch. His sling was in his hand, and he drew near to the Philistine. The Philistine came on and drew near to David with his shield bearer in front of him. When the Philistine looked and saw David, he disdained him, for he was only a youth, ruddy and handsome in appearance. The Philistine said to David, am I a dog that you come to me with sticks? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. The Philistine said to David, come to me and I will give your flesh to the birds of the air and to the wild animals of the field. But David said to the Philistine, you come to me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of our armies of Israel, whom you have defied. Saul tries to give David his armor. It doesn't fit. So David steps onto the battlefield with what he knew. He came with a sling. He came with some rocks, 5 smooth stones. And then he came with God, which is the important part. He came with a heart full of faith. To the world, that looked like foolishness. To the army of Israel, that looked foolishness. But to God, that looked like faith. David tells Goliath, you come against me with your sword and your spear, but I come to you in the name of the Lord Almighty. That's who I bring up against you. He knew something powerful. He knew that this is not my battle, but it's God's battle. And maybe we feel under-equipped in our battle times. Maybe our resources are small. Your confidence is low. Fear is often big when our resources are low. But we have good news. God never asked you to win the fight alone. Turn, if you would, to Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12. It says, for our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. This means that our greatest battles are not physical. Our greatest battles are spiritual. You and I don't fight with swords or stones. We can fight with prayer. We can fight with faith. We win or fight with worship. And then most importantly, we fight with the word of truth. We don't overcome fear by pretending to be strong. We overcome fear by surrendering to the one who already is. When we surrender to God, that's when our fear can be released. That's when we get that peace that really we can't understand at times. David's victory came from his faith, not force. And when he launched the stone, it wasn't necessarily skill that knocked that giant down, but it was God's power behind that stone as well. Fear itself fell when Goliath fell. But I do want to make a quick note that there was an action that needed to be done by David. He needed to take a step of faith before God could do whatever he wanted, but it took a step of faith from David for God to be able to work in that situation. A simple act of faith can change an entire story. Hope is contagious. When Goliath hit the ground, something shifted in the army of God. Something shifted in the Israelites when that giant fell. Not just for David, but for that entire culture, that entire place that was there. The once fearful soldiers that fled from Goliath, that fled from the Philistines, now found courage. They rose up and chased down the Philistines and claimed victory. And that's the power of faith. That's the power of hope. It spreads. When the Christian has hope, when the Christian shows that they are faithful, it's contagious. Other people pick up on it. One person's courage can ignite a community's revival. What if you are that spark? It begins with one person who believes God can use them to lift others up, who can lift others out of poverty, who can lift others out of depression, fill in the blank. God can lift that person out if one person takes a step of faith. One teacher who believes they can shape a generation. One believer who decides to maybe start praying for a revival. One person willing to step forward in faith when everyone else says, you just need to stay seated. It's not safe. Hope, again, is contagious. We might be that spark that somebody else needed to get their life back on track. If anyone looked like an underdog, though, how did Jesus Christ himself come to earth? He very much looked like an underdog, didn't he? Born in a manger, rejected by his own people, crucified by the very people that he came to save. But then 3 days later, the stone was rolled away. And then the greatest victory in history was won. The cross reminds us that when it looks like defeat, God is just getting started. If he can turn a crucifixion into resurrection, he can also turn our trials into a triumph. Faith believes that God can. Hope believes that he will. So what's your Goliath today? What's that big battle, that big obstacle that is in front of you? Let this week be the moment that we choose faith over fear. To fight your battles with God. Not fight them alone, fight them with God. Because with him, the underdog always wins. Think my God is more powerful than any force in the universe. Feel that if God is with me, there is nothing I cannot overcome. And then the action that we need to do, we need to choose faith over fear. And then be that spark that sets somebody else up for success. If you're here this evening and you've been that underdog and you need prayers from the congregation, we need picked up, we need to know that God is right there with us. He's going to go right into battle with you and I. We can ask for prayer this evening so that our hearts can be softened. So we can see that there is a brighter outlet on the other side. Perhaps we're here this evening and we haven't put Christ on in baptism yet. We haven't really fully comprehended what God is capable of. Simply because we haven't taken that step of faith. We haven't fully surrendered ourselves to God. And we need to do so this evening before it's eternally too late. You can do so as we stand and as we sing.